On to question 7. Natural selection requires something to be alive and reproducing. It needs DNA to be alive. So, which came first, the code or the organism? Well, I can actually answer this one easily enough by pointing out, as I did briefly earlier, that something does not need to be alive, at least according to your definition of life, in order for natural selection to act upon it. Cultural evolution, for instance, does not involve DNA, at least not directly. The DNA has to reproduce the humans, but in cultural evolution, humans are sort of the DNA. We're the replicators of cultural evolution. For instance, there's a culture that frowns upon stealing, frowns upon theft, and that is a survivable trait. It is survivable to frown on theft because a culture that permits theft, widespread disorder, social order collapses. It's difficult to get food, difficult to get mates and keep them. And that culture does not survive as well as the culture next door that frowns on thieving. This is, again, all about natural selection. It doesn't necessarily have to be biological evolution to be natural selection. And in the same way that a scavenger might pick apart the dead body of a biological entity that was none too survivable, in the same way a neighboring culture can sort of pick apart the remaining living humans that were in a disintegrated culture next door and assimilate them into their culture. Very similar processes to biological evolution, but natural selection does not require life. Your final statement about natural selection did not produce something necessary for natural selection to operate. Natural selection produced something necessary for biological evolution to operate. Biological evolution is the best way for natural selection to take its course. So, on to question 8. Why are radio signals evidence of intelligent life, but DNA isn't? Simply put, scientific theory can explain and predict the presence of DNA by non-intelligent processes. However, the specific radio signals were chosen because no current scientific theory has predicted any way that they could be formed without intelligent life. If anyone were to discover a way in which they could be produced naturally, that theory would be falsified. We would not be able to use those radio signals to definitively say that there is intelligent life. It's the same way that intelligent design is falsified by scientific theory positing entirely natural phenomenon for the production of DNA. So, on to question 9, a little more of a philosophical question. You ask, what if God is real as described in the Bible and I have to account for my life? Well, I have lived a good life, and I will continue to live a good life. I am afraid of anybody judging me, at least not anybody that is good by typical human standards of good. I help people who are in need. I do what I can for the poor, the uneducated. I'm dedicating my life to teaching those who need to be taught. I'm living a good life. If the God of the Bible is really as petty and vindictive as he is described in the Bible, if he would really send me to hell for living a good life with the sole caveat that I did not believe in him, then he is not a God that I would want to spend eternity with anyways. The Christian definition of hell, and I know it well, I was raised a Christian, the Christian definition of hell is a separation from the love of God. If God is as petty and vindictive as he is described in the Bible, and if God is unwilling to accept the good deeds that I have done just because I did not believe in him, I wouldn't want to spend eternity with him anyways. Not the kind of company that I would want to keep. He would not have made me such an inquisitive person and then given me no physical evidence that he existed. Either he doesn't want me to believe in him, or he doesn't exist. Which brings me to the conclusion of this question, being that the whole question has sort of been a little bit of a moot point for me, and just kind of an entertaining intellectual exercise, not really much of a serious answer. Like I said, I'm a good person, and if our human standards of good are even remotely like this God standards of good, I wouldn't have anything to worry about. I certainly hope that your own motivations for being a good person are beyond needing to avoid the wrath of God or needing to be rewarded by God, some person you've never seen or heard. I hope that if you are a good person, that you are a good person for better reasons than those. Bringing us to our last question. 10. If you answered all of my objections to my satisfaction, would I accept God as a creator and Jesus as a savior if you are able to answer my objections? Absolutely. Yes, 100%, no question. This, I believe, is the sign of a reasonable, rational mind. If you could answer my objections, my reasonable, logical, rational objections that I raise to the prospect of God and religion, I would convert. If you could show me, without a doubt, scientifically, that God is real, God loves me, and he has a reasonable explanation for his behavior, well, I would convert. If he could show me that he was a loving God, and as per your metaphor, the people he killed were evil Imperial stormtroopers on the Death Star, complicit in destroying an entire planet just so there would be fear of them. And by the way, doesn't this begin to sound a little bit like God, destroying people so that they would fear him? But in any case, if he could prove to me that the people he killed were entirely evil, soulless, beyond redemption, and that he was doing the world good by getting rid of them, I might be able to be okay with that. So, if they were that evil, these people that God had killed, if God was not as immoral as the Bible paints him to be, I would be willing to change my mind. I would especially like to talk to this God of yours and discuss these things that he's done. But, that being said, I hope that if I answer all your questions and objections satisfactorily, would you admit that God is a creation of human culture and of the human mind? Or at the very minimum, at the very least, would you be willing to admit, if I were to answer all your objections, that God is impossibly unknowable and that we must be agnostic about his existence? Let me know what you think.